but just about a minute. Want to give enough time for all of our attendees to jump on with us and us to start with good energy, positive thoughts, and knowing that this is all about making sure that our communities are safe. Um, Alexis, if you could cue up the video first, I think that'll give us a wonderful way for everyone to come in. Is that possible?
Absolutely. One sec.
Thank you. Alicia Smith with Freshwater Future. I guess I should start with my introductions. It's such a pleasure to be with everyone, providing this information on the Lead and Copper Rule Handbook, a tool for success, a tool for safety, a tool for public health. And this is something that we want many of our attendees, and even on last week, we had a great conversation with Erin from our Great Lakes Environmental Law Center, sharing information about how to use this tool. This morning, we're coming to you with our director, Jill Ryan, and she is going to be talking to you in regards to public health and what's important for you to know. We'll be followed by some community action and information with Mr. Michael Harris from Flint, Michigan, and Reverend Pinkney from Benton Harbor, Michigan. If it's not for you, without the community, it doesn't work. Thereafter, we will have Ian from Blue Conduit with us. We're so thankful to have Ian with us, and he'll be talking in regards to the artificial intelligence and amazing work around identification of lead lines and lead line replacement. Hopefully, we will have Toledo, Ohio, Ed Moore, director of public utilities, on with us to talk about why he believes this work is important from a municipality standpoint. And then thereafter, Freshwater Future staff, Ms. Christy Meyer and Brandon Tyus, will be providing us with information about community engagement and policy reform. We are prepared to do our best to ensure the safety of our loved ones throughout Michigan and beyond. So with that being said, Alexis, if you're ready, I will pause for the cause of great music, art, and young people. All the way from Milwaukee, we have Liquid Gold.
Love is a lot like the water. People just can't live without it. Water been here since we started. Now they be charging for bottles. Worldwide thirst trying to grind for survival. Pollution in the droughts been hurting us to swallow. Gotta start saving up for the kids of tomorrow. Go and cherish every drop, no waste, that's the motto. What? Save that water, clean that water, drink that water. Save that water, clean that water, drink that water. Yeah. Save that water, clean that water, drink that water. Yeah. Save that water, clean that water, drink that water.
Sipping liquid gold, got me feeling good, flowing through my body, rushing down like a river do. Wash away my sins, holy water, please forgive my soul. Really need your blessings, spread your healing all around the world.
I got one question. Hey. Do they got water on the north side? Do they got water on the east side? Tell me, do they got water on the west side? Do they got water on the south side? Let the water flow to the north side. Let the water flow to the east side. Let the water flow to the west side. Let the water flow to the south side. Let the water rain down worldwide. Let the seeds grow in the sunshine. Yeah, yeah. Let the water rain down worldwide. Let the seeds grow in the sunshine. Save that water, clean that water, drink that water. Save that water, clean that water, drink that water. Save that water, clean that water, drink that water. Save that water. drink that water.
Amazing, right? When you think about the words, save, clean, drink, safe, affordable drinking water. Save that water, clean that water, drink that water. Amazing what our young people can do, right? It's just, oh, I love it. So Alexis is going to provide us with all of the webinar 101. We have our chat box, we have our Q&A, and Alexis, if you will, walk us through what would you have us to do?
Real simple. Like last time and all the webinars we've had this year, attendees will be muted and will not be able to show their video during the duration of the webinar. If you have questions or comments, please put them in either the Q&A box if you have questions, and just general comments or questions as well, you can also put in the chat box. And then for additional resources, as well as the first webinar video, you can always visit our website. It is posted and available. It's also available on our YouTube page.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alexis. Thank you. With that being said, we're going to travel Michigan a little bit, letting everyone know what it is that we do in Freshwater Future and why we have this amazing work with the Great Lakes Environmental Law Center. But before we start that, we want to go right over to our Director Jill Ryan for Freshwater Future. And we're going to talk a little bit about public health. Jill, if you would, please.
Thank you, Alicia. I think this is so great. We're so excited that this is the second in the series on this handbook, which is an amazing tool from our partners at the Great Lakes Environmental Law Center. And we're going to make these webinars, as Alicia said, available online, but we're also going to follow them up with more work, more webinars, more information and support, because we want people to be safe and healthy. And one of the things that I think is confusing for people on the ground, especially in cities where there is what they call an action level exceedance, an ALE, you'll often hear it termed. What that means is at least 10% of the homes that were tested in that community are above the action level set by EPA of 15 parts per billion. That number doesn't mean anything in terms of public health. For health numbers, if you go to the Center for Disease Control and or the Environmental Protection Agency, they both say there is no safe level of lead. It's 0 is safe. And so even if your community hasn't tested your particular household, if there is an action level exceedance so that they're sending out letters and informing people, that means you should take some action. Lead can cause many health impacts, and those include things like damage to the brain, damage to the nervous system, which obviously can cause all sorts of learning impairments, behavioral issues. It can slow down growth and development in children. It can cause hearing and speech problems. It's a very long list. And so we just want to make sure that everybody understands this. There's no safe level. So by the time a community has an action level exceedance, it means there are homes that have above 0 for sure, and some of those homes are above 15. And we want to protect everyone. So Freshwater Future really encourages a few things to keep people safe. One is you can get lead testing. If your community doesn't provide that for you at no charge, you can also, they probably do it for a fee, but you can also go to a private testing lab and they will test your home so you can tell whether your specific place is susceptible to lead. The other things that you can do, whether you test or not, are flushing. when the water sits in pipes overnight or for 6 or 8 hours, it collects a lot of lead. It basically is, the lead is leaching out of the pipes. And that's the worst time to try and use that water. So one thing you can do is flush, flush, flush. First thing when everybody in the house, the first one up in the morning, you want to flush that water. That could be by doing a load of laundry, but we want to flush that water for about 5 minutes. That does a great deal to reduce the levels. Then in addition to that, if you put a lead specific filter on your faucet, that can further decrease those lead levels. So if you take these steps, testing for your own peace of mind, ensuring you have someone flushing in the morning or after the water sits for a long time, and you have a good lead filter that is certified for lead, those steps will really help reduce the lead in your water. So we just wanted to make sure that everybody knows the reason we're doing these webinars is because we have a great tool to help with public health. This is a public health issue, and we want everybody to be safe and know that your families are safe at home. Freshwater Future is really, really happy to be a partner in this project, and we will also be providing follow-up and support. So if you're thinking during these webinars, wow, I really want to engage others in my community to get the word out, to find out more about what's happening in our community, we're going to be here for you to help with that. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Alicia. Thank you.
No, thank you. This is so important for us to be able to help people understand that they're not alone. And this is why the handbook was created. And with that being said, we're going to go to Erin. She is here with us we did a great overview of the entire handbook last week, webinar 1. But Erin, would you please kind of just give us a review, let folks know why this came about and why it's important?
Sure, thanks so much. Hi everyone, my name is Erin Meddy. I'm a staff attorney with the Great Lakes Environmental Law Center. This handbook really we prepared as a free public resource to empower resident watchdogs to really conduct their own investigation of their water system by enabling them to really get the important information that they need and to ask the right questions. And so we really hope that the handbook will allow you to be prepared to begin like I said, your own investigation of your own water department and hold them accountable. The handbook gives you steps that you or any resident really can take and that you really have a right to take under the lead and copper rule. So we're hoping it's an easy tool to inform you of your rights and give you more control over the safety of your drinking water. Just a really quick overview of how to use the handbook. There's really 6 main sections that cover everything from how to identify lead service lines and monitor for lead in your water, what happens if the lead level is too high, and what water systems are required to do in terms of communicating with the public, preventing corrosion of lead into water, and replacing lead service lines. So each section contains information about what water systems are required to do under the Michigan Lead and Copper Rule, actions you can take, and also sample FOIA requests and examples of records that you would likely receive from a FOIA request. So those sections track with the 6 core requirements of the Michigan Lead and Copper Rule. And we hope, while we hope it's an easy tool, if you ever do have any questions, any specific questions about your own water system or how to apply what's in the handbook to your investigation, if you need assistance with drafting a FOIA request or with reviewing any documents that you might receive, we're always happy to help with that. So feel free to reach out to me or Nick Leonard at the Great Lakes Environmental Law Center. And we can help you out with your own investigation of your water system. And with that, I will turn it back over to Alicia.
Wonderful. And yes, Dominique, thank you so much for asking for that handbook to be the link to be put into the chat box. It is there for you now. And And it is a great resource. And the Law Center, as well as Freshwater Future here, are here to help and support you in any way. This is at no cost to the residents and communities that are suffering. We know that there are 26 cities in Michigan that are dealing with this harm. Please, please, please act as soon as you can. And that is why it is so important, Alexis, if we can prepare to queue up our amazing partners at the Flint Development Center and the amazing virtual tour. I don't want to say too much because I want Mike to be able to have something to talk about, and I can get so excited. I'll tell his story and everybody else's. So I will not do that. I am going to just allow the tour to give you what it is that Flint is doing. Alexis? Wow, right? Amazing, amazing work. Michael Harris, all the way from Flint. Could you please just walk us through the amazing community action that Flint, Michigan has taken?
Well, thank you, Alicia. Thank the Freshwater Future crew, Jill, Brandon, and everybody else from the Freshwater family. We really appreciate this opportunity to talk about what's going on in Flint and surrounding the Flint Community Lab, the McKinsey Patrice Crew Flint Community Lab. The Flint McKinsey Patrice Crew Flint Community Lab is located inside the Flint Development Center. We bought an abandoned school building that was beat up, tired, and almost in disrepair. And we turned it into this wonderful community center. And throughout the issue with the Flint water crisis, we wanted to find out how we could empower individuals in the community to take a hold of what's happening with water in the city of Flint. So I got with this wonderful friend of mine named Jill Ryan and others. We came up with a wonderful concept of teaching young people to become water warriors, to be able to test that water, find out what's in your water, and empower you as an individual about your particular home and what's going on in your home in regards to lead and other contaminants down the line with water. The Flint Development Center is a full-fledged community center. We offer wonderful programs from YMCA, after-school programs. We have feeding programs. We have a full-fledged plethora of things going on in the Flint Flint Development Center. The lab is a wonderful piece of that, which is this great space where youth can come into that lab, learn a skill. We're empowering young people to become lab techs, chemists. We're empowering them to be water warriors and part of the future of what's happening on the ground in regards to water. And one of the empowering pieces we have for that is to have the residents of the city of Flint and beyond to know what's in their water. This is the first of its kind community lab. It won't be the last, but it's the first of its kind community lab. We want to be able to build them in Benton Harbor, Toledo, and other places around the country and around the world, and be the template for other people to see this wonderful endeavor. We're also providing jobs as a way to empowerment. We have principal chemists there. We have a full-fledged lab. We have young people who are becoming lab techs. We have a staff with Dominique and others who are doing the communications pieces, doing the outreach programs to make sure residents and city individuals know what's happening in the lab. So this is not just a small endeavor. This is a gigantic endeavor to make sure that the city of Flint residents are empowered when it comes to water. And I encourage everyone to come out and be a part of what we're doing here. If you want to get your water tested, you can come to 4121 Martin Luther King Avenue, or you can check us out on our website at flintdc.org, Flint, the letter D, the letter C, .org, and put in your bid to get your water tested, and we'll be right there for you. We'll come out and send young people to your house to test your water, to grab your water, grab samples, and bring it back to the lab. Or we can have a way for you to come into the lab and bring your sources there in a proper procedure to get your water tested. But anyway, I'm going to keep it brief, and we'll probably talk more about this. But the Flint Development Center, Mackenzie Patrice Kroom Flint Community Lab, is this wonderful space. It's a full-fledged lab. It's a place for you to get your water tested, and we're on the move there, and it's a wonderful piece. And I encourage everybody to be a part of this.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mike. Mr. Harris, I when I walked into the lab, I was just in awe. State of the art equipment.
Yes.
Young people who are understanding how to operate this equipment. Chemists. And I must say, African-American chemists. You know, I'm just going to have that moment with myself. I was just like, whoa. I'm telling you, Daryl Sparks was in Texas and just talked so highly that he got a standing ovation about his work and the work that these young people are doing. And so thank you so much for this. Last week, during our first webinar, we had the opportunity of seeing Benton Harbor, young people in action as well. They had a video that says, we got to stand up and put our hands on the work and get it done. And so thankful to have with us today, Reverend Pinckney from Benton Harbor, who is busy getting this work done. Right now in Benton Harbor, there's a number of things that are happening. But as I said before, I can definitely tell all the stories because I'm super excited. But please, Reverend Pinckney.
Lisa, thank you so much. And I want to give a big shout out to Mike. Mike have done a tremendous job. And you know what? I would never have met you, Elisa, or Jill without Mike. Mike is the one who introduced me to you two. Matter of fact, we was at an event in Flint, and he brought me over to his location and said, you gotta meet Elisa and Jill. You gotta do it, you know? And I'm really, really excited. And here's the thing, the big thing about meeting you and Jill and Mike, without you, we would have never known that there was a water problem in Benton Harbor, because they kept telling people that the water was good. And the first thing you did was you sent me some containers. We went out and tested the water and sent it to the University of Michigan. And then they got wind of that. And then they started telling the truth. You see, that was the big thing about that. They started telling the truth because now we was on the case. And without that, they never would have exposed themselves to something like this. And I'm really excited. And we formed the Benton Harbor Community Water Council with your leadership and Jill leadership and Big Mike, all y'all put it together. And we're really, really excited. Here's what we did. We had a water advisory just recently because Mike O'Malley, his history is not getting the job and not giving people the information. And once we discovered that, we went out and Jill and Freshwater Future got us some door hangers, and probably had maybe about 2,000 door hangers. And I call them the kitty commission. And I don't mean to be to call them kids and stuff like that, but they're our children. But they're a commission, and they went out and put door hangers on every single door in the city of Benton Harbor. They did it, and I was there with them for a part, but I wasn't there all the way, but they did the do. And here's the thing that's important that people need to know. They are the ones who actually going out here testing the water in the people's home. We completed the first 60. Now we have completed 52, and we were scheduled to complete the 60 this week, but it was a malfunction on the city of Benton Harbor more than anything else. And we have to be aware that they don't function like a normal city. So we have to make adjustments in order to get the job done. But my group, what they have done is out here making sure that the water's good, talking to people, educating people about the water, telling people that, we must check for ourselves, make sure everybody have a filter and things like that. Also, what we did, when we had our last drive-by with the water filters, we also placed the water filter on everybody's home, especially senior citizens. And we went in there with our gloves, and we made sure everybody have a mask, and we went in there and made sure that we completed the mission. And these young folks, it's not me, it's them. They the one who actually doing the work. I'm just their supervisor and making sure the work get done. But we are having a water giveaway today at 3 o'clock. And my young folks is ready to roll because they will be doing all the heavy lifting. I will not do any heavy lifting. That's a problem. And it's a drive-by. We keep it as a drive-by. And I am so excited about all the work that they have done and continue to do. And we have our uniform on day. And the good news, I'm going to have pictures and everything because I'm going to remember this, to have
That's
pictures.
right.
Because we'll be so busy working. We don't, that's the last thing come to my mind is taking pictures and stuff like that because we just want to get the job done. So
You do a wonderful job.
And I'm excited, and I'm just happy to have a team of people who actually want to work, and I'm proud of them. So that's the story of Benton Harbor. That's what we do, and that's it. And a big shout out to you, Mike. Big shout. You the man.
Hey, Rev, you being very modest here. You were a legend in this community in Benton Harbor and around the state of Michigan because you were willing to stand up for people who didn't have rights. And when I heard about, I didn't even know who you were, but I heard your name resonate around the country and around the world and around definitely the state of Michigan. And you've been a warrior from day one, and you got to support and got to be there for people who are warriors. Jill's a warrior. Alicia's a warrior. Ian and rest of the people on this call, Christy and others, you guys are warriors. And so it's wonderful that we can come together as a family and support each other. Even though we can't be in the same space right now, our time is coming again where we can hug and love up on one another and break bread. And this is wonderful, Reverend Pinckney. And we thank you, brother. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It is community action.
Yeah.
It is all of the work that you have done to ensure the safety of our loved ones and community members within our cities. I am so very thankful at this time to introduce to so many, a young man that many times we bump heads, but the head bumping is all in love. And that is none other than our public utilities director here in Toledo, Ohio, because this is a regional issue. And we want folks to know that there are solutions. We have issues in Detroit, and that we, the people of Detroit, are working hard to see taking place some solution. But in Toledo, we've had our issues, and I am very thankful, so honored to introduce to you Director Ed Moore, all the way from Toledo, Ohio. He's going to share with us an amazing story. Ed?
All right.
Thank you, Alicia. I appreciate it. I just don't know how I follow that up though with Reverend Pinckney there. That was amazing. I feel like I'm ready to go out and hit the streets now and just incredible stuff. I appreciate that, Rev.
Thank you.
thanks for having me first and foremost. I tell you what, it's been an experience here in Toledo. I've been on this job for 6.5 years now. Mike, it's good seeing you. Last time I saw you, I think it was 2017. We were in New Orleans, and if my memory recall serves me properly, there may or may not have been a mechanical bull in that night that we hung out in New Orleans. So just gonna leave it at that. What happens in New Orleans stays in New Orleans. Good seeing you, Mike.
That's right, Ed. We all fell a few times, right?
Exactly. So no, my story is kind of a different kind of story. I grew up here in Toledo, born and raised, public school kid. Grew up in the Junction neighborhood. You probably heard Alicia talk about Junction numerous times. Left, went to the military, served in the U.S. Navy, came back to Toledo. Essentially, I've been a public servant my whole life, starting with the military. And shortly after I got out of the military, I got hired by the city of Toledo as a utility worker, just an entry-level position. Been here 28 years now, kind of rose up through the ranks, led numerous divisions, the sewer division, streets, bridges, and harbor, engineering services, was director of public services. Now I'm director of public utilities. Got it. I have an engineering background as well as a master's degree in business administration. So just bring a lot of different perspectives and thoughts on how a utility should be ran. But I tell you what, one of the most interesting things that ever happened to me, 4 months on the job, is when the Toledo Do Not Drink advisory happened. I was on the job for 4 months. And I tell you what, it was an eye opener. It allowed me to really take a deep look at what this utility was about. It gave us a chance to reflect internally of what our strengths and weaknesses were. I think we learned a lot about ourselves. We learned a lot about communication. We learned a lot about how we're not properly communicating with our stakeholders, the communities we serve, where we were not good at listening. So that's one of the things I tried to change here over the years, is how do we get better at listening to what the concerns of our constituency is. So a real important step in that was in 2017 when we went to New Orleans, with the help of, I think it was Katie Russo from American River. She talked me into going to that. Alicia played a big role in that also, and helping me understand why it was important to go to New Orleans and listen to that session on the One Water session. But from my perspective, I had never heard water conversations from a social justice perspective. And I tell you what, when I left there, we had a lot of fun there. We learned a lot of things. But when I left there, I came away as a different person. It gave me a different thought process on how a utility should be ran. If you're going to serve everyone and you're going to serve them the way they need to be served, then you have to look at it from a different perspective as well. And I was not always privy to that information. I heard great people speak at that meeting. I remember Gary Brown talked in a session up there. He was the director of utilities in Detroit at the time, and I met Palencia. I met her. A lot of great people were there. And Monica Smith, who can forget that conversation, that talk she had at the one session. I left there just incredibly motivated to do something great for Toledo. So I often talk about how Toledo is closely related to Flint. So it was really a pleasure to meet Mike there. But Toledo is related to Flint because what happened here in Toledo in 2014 was followed up directly after that the next year with the Flint situation. So what happened is as Flint was unfolding and it hit, I found myself in a difficult position as far as trying to explain how a utility runs when I go and talk to people. And the first thing they would say is, why should I believe you? Flint lied to us. Why do we know that you're not? How do we know that you're not lying to us? You know, and that, to me, that was a big deal because, again, as I said, I grew up here in Toledo. I live here in Toledo. My entire family lives here in Toledo. So it hurt me from a perspective of, now I have to say, now, you know, I have to ensure people that my family lives here, and I would never do anything to harm anyone here in Toledo. If I had to stand in front of a camera and say, do not drink our water, I'm going to do that. Even if it requires me to not be in this job anymore, I'm going to do that. But the one thing I always said about the difference between Toledo and Flint was Flint happened the way it happened. But when we thought we had an issue here in Toledo, within 2 to 3 hours, we were saying, don't drink the water until we figure out what's going on. So I thought that was really important. And I try to emphasize that to my customer base, that you are in good hands and we're going to do what's right by you socially. So that was really important from that perspective, as far as how Toledo reacted to a crisis versus what Flint did, because I truly feel that government failed in Flint. I really do. Like I said, I've been a government employee my whole life. And then to have to think about, how do you truly answer that question? Are you being truthful to me? Are you lying to me? That motivated me to be better. But so what we've done since then is I work with Alicia, her and Christy Meyer. Christy, hello. Christy from Freshwater Future as well introduced me to Ian from Blue Conduit. We had a Zoom meeting to talk about some of the work that Blue Conduit did in Flint. And at the same time, I had already started talking about how do we replace all of these lead service lines here in Toledo. I had already had it in my mind, we're going to do this, especially after Flint happened. So it was a great opportunity for me to meet the people from Blue Conduit and find out the incredible work they did in Flint. And after I left that meeting, and I don't know, Ian, maybe you didn't realize it, but I think I called Alicia and said, look, we got to do this. This is the way to go. So with that being said, and I'm not going to steal Ian's thunder, and because we did recently, we just got a grant from the US EPA to fund the study that Blue Conduit is going to do here in Toledo, so that we can remove all of these lead service lines in our area. And through that process, we've also budgeted up to $2 million a year is what we're going to spend to remove all lead service lines in Toledo, on both the public right of way and on the private side. So just a little bit about what we're trying to accomplish here in Toledo. Just again, from my perspective, this job as utility director is more about working with people and taking care of people and ensuring that, you know, our health and welfare is in order, versus, you know, just nuts and bolts and engineering of a utility. So thank you for having me. Alicia, I'm going to stick around for a while. Also, I do have a little bit more time, but I do appreciate all of you, and thank you for all the work you're doing.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you so much for allowing the community to sit at the table with you. With the Toledo Water Council, there's a very strong water council in Toledo that is working through a number of issues, water shutoff, moratoriums, all kinds of work, and you have been right there with them. So thank you so very much.
So can I
Go
add
ahead.
one thing to that? Just real quick, we're going to talk about this more, but there are a couple pieces of legislation that's coming into the next cycle at City Council. One is to fund the debt forgiveness program. I mean, not debt forgiveness, I'm sorry, the water affordability study. And we're going to do that one. And then the legislation authorizing us to accept the grant funds for the Blue Conduit study.
Wonderful. Yay!
Thank you.
See, I'm not mean all the time.
You know I love you.
Love you as well. Thank you so much. It's such a wonderful thing to be able to communicate with the utilities and the community. And Christy has also done some amazing work in making sure that those connections happen. And we're going to hear about that in regards to policy. But before we go any further, it alluded to some amazing work of a young man, Mr. Ian Robinson of Blue Conduit. And we want to give him the opportunity to share with us, what is Blue Conduit and what amazing work are you doing? And I'm very thankful to have Ian with us. So at this time, Ian Robinson.
Thank you so much, Alicia. Thank you very much to Freshwater Future, and Ed. It's great to see you on the webinar again, and really excited to talk about the work that we're doing with Blue Conduit in terms of helping cities and communities better understand what their service lines are made out of, their service line inventories, and how to use data-driven decision-making to really accelerate the replacement program so they're as efficient as possible. That way, getting the lead out of the ground quicker, using fewer resources to do it, and that way eliminating these public health risks as quickly as we can. So let me just make sure that I can do this right. So yeah, so what we're excited to talk about today is talking about Blue Conduit as this webinar is about solutions and tools for communities and utilities to use to not only get in compliance with Michigan's lead and copper rule, but more importantly, work towards providing safe, clean, and affordable drinking water. And we know that service lines and lead service lines themselves are a barrier to doing that throughout the country and particularly in the Great Lakes. So we know lead service lines are a recognized public health problem. And then when we talk about the sources of lead in drinking water, lead service lines are cited as the largest source of lead in drinking water systems. Obviously, there are others when we talk about in-home plumbing, but removing the lead service lines from communities goes a long way towards reducing the risk of lead in drinking water. There are between 6 and 10 million lead service lines in the United States, and it's going to cost tens of billions of dollars for communities to replace all of these. At Blue Conduit, we believe that all cities should be able to replace these pipes, these lines in time-efficient ways. And we use a machine learning model that attempts to do this by allowing cities to identify and remove their lead service lines faster, potentially saving millions of dollars, and also at the same time using the data that is driving the model for replacing the lead pipes to be able to communicate with the community and using public health professionals to really reduce the risk of lead exposure in the meantime, so that residents are aware of the risks and what they can do in the meantime. And I think this is where, as Ed had alluded to, we're really excited because our work is not just about working with utilities. As much as we can, it's about working with the utilities and the communities to really remove the lead pipes and reduce, help them understand lead risks so that they can reduce their exposure. And that's why we're really excited about the EPA Environmental Justice Grant, which is as much about working with the city of Toledo in using this model to guide its replacement project as it is to use that for the output of the model so that we can empower the community with information about where lead service lines are likely to be located so that residents can take the appropriate steps to reduce their risk. So I think when we think about, well, why do you need a machine learning model to tell you where there are lead service lines in communities? And the answer is that many cities do not have accurate inventories of their lead service lines. The materials that they have or records are either unreliable, they're missing, or they're inaccurate. It makes it really hard to plan a replacement program or to communicate public health information to communities if it is being based upon data that is, as I had said, reliable, outdated, or missing. And it's very expensive as well for a city to verify pipe material. We know that there's two sections of the service line, the private and the public side, and what somebody sees going into their basement is not always the same material that is going to go from the water main to the curb box. It makes it very difficult to verify what's going on. So if cities can't go and check every single pipe, because that's really expensive, at Blue Conduit, we are using statistical methods to make sure that they are gathering the right data in order to make the best statistically driven solutions. And we know that the order matters when going about pipe replacement, because each day that residents continue to live with either a lead pipe going into their home or the uncertainty about whether their pipe is made of lead or not is another day in which residents live with the risk of a lead pipe and possibly lead tainted water going into their homes through the service lines. And so we want to make sure that we can help them strategize where to go first and where to go next. So how does the Blue Conduit model work? So there's kind of a few different parts. So what we do is we take existing data. So we look at what is information that is known about from existing sources about service lines, about the housing stock, age of home, other construction records that we can find, and we put that into our model to understand what is known, what is unknown. And then in that first phase that you see, what we do is we generate what we call a recommended inspection list, which is a representative set of homes from the community where we go and we seek to have verify what the service line material is at those homes, so that it's not, we're not doing a full-on excavation, but we are getting a visual verification of both sides of the service line, so that we can then feed that data into the model, so that when the city and utility goes about doing the more expensive replacements, that model generates home by home probabilities of the likelihood of lead for every single home in the service area, so that they're targeting their resources at the homes with the greatest likelihood of having a lead, getting the biggest bang for their buck with the expensive replacement projects, but also using that information, and we can talk about this going forward, of how to use, because we know that service line replacement takes many years, and that they're not going to be able to get all the lead pipes out of the ground today. So, but there are going to be homes that that as they wait for a replacement, will continue to have a lead service line connecting to their homes. So how can the model can generate usable and actionable information for the utilities and public health professionals and community groups to take steps in that way. So kind of what we generate for our customers and for communities is something that looks like this. It's a GIS map here, where it is home by home, the probability of the service line being made of lead. And this can be used to really not just allocate resources of which homes to go to and when, but also driving public health communication and community outreach. I guess this kind of shows in a 3-step model how we work. So in the first graphic there, you have the first step is the recommended inspection list. And then once those inspections are done, in that second graphic, you'll see that we're able to then take all those homes that were either unknown. And by unknown, it's we didn't have a clear sense one way or another of whether they contained a lead service line or not. That second one, we start to give a likelihood. Obviously, we go on a scale from 0 to 100 with the statistics, but this model, we just kind of have likely, not likely, but when we generate statistics, it's more than just light green or light yellow. But what that generates is that prioritized replacement list of, given this information, where can the utility go first to prioritize its efforts to get the most lead out of the ground, and then continually learning and feeding that data back into the model, so that as they go and do more replacements, they get to that phase 3, or that last image, not phase 3, of getting the lead out of the ground as quick by targeting first the homes that have the greatest likelihood of having lead. So in looking at just some data about how the model performs, people say, well, how do you know that your model is being accurate? Now, there's a lot of things that go into this, but what this shows is the hit rate, or the percentage of excavations that have been done in communities that we've worked where they found lead. And now there's a lot of things that can influence this, but what it shows is, so Town 1 was the work that our team did in Flint, and you can see that regularly the hit rate was around 70–75% in Flint. Towns 2, 3, and 4 are other communities that we're working in now, and you can see that the model continues to perform at a very high level there, regularly above 75, 80, 90%. And really, what does this mean when you talk about what first cost to utilities, but what we're really want to know is, what does it mean for the for the residents and their exposure to lead? And in the simplest way, the more efficient that a program is, it means that if they need to get 500 lead service lines out of the ground, and they are operating at a higher efficiency in terms of a hit rate, it means that they will have to do fewer excavations digs in order to remove that number of lead pipes. So that obviously comes with savings, because for every excavation that the city does not have to do, that is money that can be used for future excavations at targeted lead homes. But it also means that there's fewer days that the residents are going to be living with the risk of a lead service line going into their home. And I think one of the other parts that's really we take really to heart is the data-driven outreach and communication. So in addition to this information being used by the utilities to guide the replacements, how can we make this accessible for the communities so that there is greater transparency, so that residents and community groups are empowered to understand what is the what is the service line material going into their home, or the likely service line material going into their home, and what they can do about it. So what we do is we take the same model outputs that we're sending to the water utility to drive their decisions, but we're really putting it together in a public health first communication about really how can residents use this information to make decisions about their service line and what they can do given the level of risk of whether they have a lead service line or not. So we're really, as we talked about, we're working with Toledo on this EPA environmental justice grant. We really are aware of the environmental justice and inequality when it comes to the communities that are affected by either the lead, that continue to have a high concentration of lead service lines, and really making sure that our services can be accessible and affordable to those kinds of communities. So similar to working with, we're working with Toledo on the EPA environmental justice grant. We're working with foundations, local and national, to really make sure that our work can be as accessible as possible to communities, regardless whether they can pay, regardless of what they can pay, but really making sure that our services can accelerate the removal and replacement of lead service lines in communities across the country. So that's what I've got. I'm excited to hear the following presentations and to answer your questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian. That is so important. The most important piece that you talked about was making sure that communities are aware and have the information necessary. We're going to talk more about that, but I want to make sure that the attendees and the panelists know that you can ask questions in the chat box as well as in the Q&A box. So thank you, Ian, for that information. And we talked a little bit, and you've heard folks talk about water councils. What is this water council? What is this community action? What is a watchdog, Aaron? You know, we have this handbook. One of the stronger lead statements or lead actions or legislation is the lead and copper rule. Now you have the tool to do the work. So we have Brandon Titus with us from Freshwater Future, and we talk about knocking down doors, taking names, and making the work happen. That is Brandon. And so with that being said, I want Brandon to come on and just share with us community engagement. What does that mean? Brandon?
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure what's going on with my camera. I apologize. You can't see my face. I haven't dressed up for you guys.
Oh no.
However,
we'll assist you with that. We'll assist. Alexis, can we see if he has capabilities? But please go right ahead.
Yeah, so first off, I just want to thank Freshwater Future. I want to thank you, Alicia, for bringing me onto this call. And I would like to kick off this conversation about how one of the people who really opened my eyes to the effectiveness of community is Reverend Pinckney. I got with him in the summer of 2019, and you can believe his word that he put me to work. But that's no problem at all, because it was good work, and it has been something that I have appreciated from Reverend Pinckney, because there are so many things about him that have really ignited something inside of me, such as his leadership, such as his desire to want to make sure that the people are treated fairly, and his consistency in making the right decision. And as I kick off this conversation, the two questions that I want to answer during this conversation is, what is a water council? And what is the foundation of Benton Harbor Community Water Council? Now, to answer that first question, a water council is a group of leaders from the community for the community to address water issues specific to their community and ensures their local government's goals are aligned with the community's priorities. Now, that's extremely important. And as we come into this situation regarding lead, let's give a little bit of fact about Benton Harbor. There are 85% of Benton Harbor's population is Black. And way before we found lead in our water, we found that our Black community was in the school to prison pipeline. And when we learn about lead, we understand that when children ingest lead, there is cognitive impairments. There is a lower IQ. There is a heightened aggression. And for so long, the Black community has already faced systemic pressure, systemic disparities. To be able to add on water as a source that can increase that number is something that needs to be taken seriously and dealt with immediately. Now, incidentally, I want to give you guys a short story. There was a lady who sat with a therapist and wanted to discuss her relationship with her husband. And so the therapist proceeded with questions and like this. The therapist asked, "Does he beat you up?" And she says, "Oh, honey, no, I get up an hour before him every day." The therapist asked, "Does he call you out of your name?" And she says, "Oh my goodness, all the time. He calls me baby and sweetheart and dumpling, and I love it." And then he asks, "Does he yell at you?" And she says, "Well, it happens around 2 a.m. because he snores like a bear." Okay. And then the therapist came down and he asked, "Well, what seems to be the problem?" And she says, "He just doesn't communicate." And communication is what we're talking about right now, because this is a very important part that we need to understand. If you tell someone something and they don't understand your point, it's no different than not communicating at all. Okay, I want you guys to really understand that if you tell someone something and they don't understand your point, it is no different than not communicating at all. Benton Harbor has experienced action-led exceedance since 2018. Yet when the Benton Harbor Community Council went out in the summer of 2019, over 60% of homes didn't know that there was a lead issue in their community. Since 2019, the Benton Harbor Community Water Council was formed, and they let the community know with effectiveness, efficiency, and they made it, and they got the information out quick, fast, and in a heartbeat. Who had the doors, who had the lines out of the doors for filter distribution? The Benton Harbor Water Council. Who brought the majority samples to keep the city in compliance, the water samples? The Benton Harbor Water Council. Who brought the youth off the streets and helped them engage their community? The Benton Harbor Water Council. Who has done the work for the city and has not received a dime? The Benton Harbor Community Water Council. And believe you me, anyone doing the good work should be paid to do the good work. However, the Benton Harbor Community Water Council does not work for money. They work for the foundational principles that they have in place. And what are those principles? It's communication, service, youth engagement, and making the right decision. My name is Brandon Tyus, and thank you all.
Whoa. Talk about social action. Talk about environmental justice. That is exactly what Brandon has shared with us from the ground up. The community first, the ability to communicate, the ability to get the work done, and the ability to save lives. Thank you so much, Brandon. I'm so thankful to introduce our next panelist, Ms. Christy Meyer. It is one thing to have all of this action and get all of these tools in place, but to take those tools and change it into reform of policies that do or do not work for us. I think that it is so important to have Christy on our team because she educates us in a way that helps us understand that this is not just about knocking on doors. We got to pick up pens. We got to write. Legislation has to change. And so with that being said, Christy, please, thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. I'm gonna, hopefully my internet does not freeze. We've been having some issues. I think they're doing some upgrades in the area. So thank you. I'm really excited to be here with everybody today. I'm going to be talking about Michigan's lead and copper rule at the very high level, but some of the gaps that I see, some of my concerns, some of my questions, and some opportunities for community members and groups to get involved. So the new copper rule requires all water systems to do an inventory of the materials that their water line is made up of and to submit that to EGLE by January 1st of 2025. They had to submit their preliminary one back in January of this year. And you can see like the before, right? So there's some plastic on the private side, the homeowner side, and then a question mark as to what that service line is. And then after, in January 1st of 2025, they have to know for sure everything that their service lines are made up of. So you see the plastic, the copper, the lead, and so forth. Earlier this year, at the end of January, all of the water systems had to notify the residents if they had a lead line or an unknown but likely lead line. The issue there is that it's my understanding that not in those letters, not everybody was made aware of how to protect themselves from lead exposure. And so EGLE really needs to do a better job of working with water utilities to make sure that the letters that are going out clearly defines how to protect yourself. And then as well as some systems have yet to submit their preliminary information of what their lines are made up of. And some systems that have submitted their information claim we just don't have any clue what our lines are made up of. And that I'll talk a little bit more about too, which is a real problem. So the new rule does require that all service lines be replaced within 20 years. And the water systems have to replace their lines, if it's lead, at 5% a year, unless they have, unless they're out of compliance with the lead and copper rule. As Jill talked about, that is 15 parts per billion at 10% of the houses within the water system. And that time, then they have to replace the water lines at 7% a year until they come into compliance with that lead and copper rule, and then they can go back to the 5% a year. Here's a really big potential loophole. If you recall, I said that that some of the water systems didn't submit, well, they submitted their preliminary information and a lot of it was unknown. So they don't have to do a complete inventory until January 1st of 2025. So how do you replace lead lines at 5% a year if you don't know what the line is made up of? So they could push this out till January 1st of 2025 and get started then. And most systems have never done a full lead service line replacement before. And it's my understanding that they're not really prepared to educate the residents on how to protect themselves and the proper outreach before, during, and after. So that's a real problem. Now, the new rule also requires the first and the fifth liter of the water to be tested if there is a known lead line. So the first liter, as you can see in this picture up top, will pull from the house lines. So you'll get an idea of the lead is within the house. The fifth liter would be pulling from the service line, and that would tell you if the lead is coming from that service line. Now, if it's unknown or if it's not lead, they're really, well, I should say if it's not lead, they're only required to pull the first liter. So that won't really tell you, well, so they only pull the first lead up. The problem with the unknowns is that it's not clear if Eagle is really advising the water utilities to pull the first and the fifth leader. From what I can tell from looking at the data, they're not requiring them to pull the fifth leader as well, which would give them an idea of what they may have as their material in that line. And then Michigan's rule also drops the lead action level to 12 parts per billion in 2025. Until then, the actionable level is 15 parts per billion. Now, we heard Jill talk about this, right? We all know that there's no safe level of lead in our drinking water, and that 15 parts per billion or even 12 parts per billion is not a health standard. So if a sample comes back under the 15 or even the 12 parts per billion, but over 0, the water's still contaminated. And unfortunately, the state, as we heard Jill talk about too, is sending out those kind of mixed and seriously harmful messages at times, saying the water is safe to drink under 15 parts per billion, when honestly, they should be saying to people, 15 parts per billion is a violation of the lead and copper rule, and 0 parts per billion is the safe level for drinking water. So let's see. So the water utilities also must notify residents within 3 days of an exceedance if they're out of compliance with the lead and copper rule. And at that time, they don't provide any educational information. They're not required to provide any educational information. Imagine as a resident that you hear there's this public advisory and then you don't know how to protect yourself. How do you keep yourself safe from this exposure? They're required within the 60 days to then put out that educational material. And certainly the material that's put out will matter. Where it's posted will matter. How it's sent out will matter. And is it in an appropriate language for the community will matter too. In my opinion though, that 60 days is 57, probably 59, too late. It really should be sending that information out at the time the public health advisory goes out. And then the state is required to develop a state drinking water advisory council. And this is made up of 9 members. I'm told that they haven't met in many months, but when they were meeting, the last time they met, they were pulling together a request for proposal to solicit people to put in a proposal to develop educational materials to support them and being able to really get this information out to Michiganders. The rule also requires that any water system that services 50,000 customers or more to develop a local drinking water advisory council as well. They're only required to meet once a year. And it's really kind of a check the box type thing is what I'm hearing from other folks around Michigan, that they're not really, they met there one time, they're not really doing anything, but they're supposed to be putting together educational materials and how to outreach to the community about keeping yourself safe from these lead exposures. So what can the community do? What can community members do and groups do? I think we've heard some of this stuff, but definitely attend the local drinking water advisory councils. Get to know who are on those local drinking water advisory councils. Urge them to meet more often, make sure they understand your concerns, get involved. If your population is too small, like I know Benton Harbor has been interested in pulling something together like this, then talk with your local decision makers and the water system and really urge and push. And I know that you guys are doing that great work there. So keep it up. And ask for your water to be tested, as Jill talked about. You know, if there is a lead exceedance, the utility should be able to do that for free. If not, they may charge a small fee. And if you have high lead in your water system, ask your local health department for a free filter. They are providing these in some areas. It has been kind of a pain, I understand, to get them at times. If not, definitely invest in a water filter. You want something that is NSF certified. I put the link there. There are different kinds, but make sure to replace your cartridge. Follow all of the directions. And if you need support, let us know. We do have some of that materials up on our website. I would also say obtain a copy of your water service line materials inventory. Know what your system is made up of, what your line is. What are those sampling protocols? If it's an unknown line, if you have an unknown line and others do in your community, are they just pulling the first liter or are they pulling the first and the fifth? Encourage them to pull the fifth as well. And what kind of educational materials do they have? Ask them to share those with you. Like I said, get to know your local elected officials. I will always say that. Make sure they know that, you know, your concerns, your why is this really important to you? And then as we heard Brandon talk about the importance of water councils and Alicia and even Ed and Reverend Pinckney and Michael, you know, we're here to support you in pulling together water councils to ensure that community members can come together and protect their water for themselves and align the governmental goals with the goals of the community. So I'll stop there. I know we're running a little late. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Christy. No, thank you. It's so important that we bring this back to why we're here. We're here to ensure that you understand you now have the Lead and Copper Rule Handbook that has been developed by the Great Lakes Environmental Law Center. We have our director on, Nick Leonard. Nick, if you would come on and have a few words prior to our going into our Q&A, because we do have some questions in the chat box. I would greatly appreciate that. Are you there, Nick?
Yeah, I'm here.
Wonderful.
Hey, everybody.
Just wanted share the importance of this handbook and how communities should use this in this term watchdog, if you would.
Yeah, so we prepared this handbook because, as I shared at our last session, a lot of residents were coming to us with questions about lead in their drinking water and had a very simple question, is it safe for me and my family to drink? And unfortunately, the answer to that question can be very complicated. It can leave residents feeling really frustrated. And so we wanted to prepare this handbook so that residents could feel empowered to ask the right questions from their water system, from the state, get the right information from their water systems, from their state, so that they could basically make their own judgment as to whether their water was safe. And in order to do that, you need to be an effective, watchdog. And so this really, empowers residents to be that watchdog, not only for their families, but for their communities, so that they know what information they need to be looking for, what questions they need to be asking, to try to make sense of this complicated issue, and to try to get an answer to that basic question of, is my water safe or is it not?
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Much needed. And as Christy showcased the importance of understanding how to use this handbook, making sure that you ask the appropriate questions. With that being said, we do have questions in our chat box, and Reverend Pinckney asked the question, how do we get this information out to communities? How are we going to get this the information about Blue Conduit, the information about water councils, the information about the handbook? So let's start with Blue Conduit. How do we plan to get this information about the collaborative opportunities with Blue Conduit out? Ian, can you take that portion, please?
Yeah, absolutely, Alicia. Well, I think so. How to raise the opportunities to collaborate with Blue Conduit? It's in forums like this where connections are made, where this kind of work happens, where we've talked to. It was through the connection with Freshwater Future that we were able to then work with the city of Toledo to then put together a grant proposal to really connect the data with the work the utility is doing, with the public awareness that needs to happen around this to protect public health. It's it's those kinds of connections that are happening in other cities that we're working in to do this. And we're also obviously trying to work within the water with water utilities directly and with cities to raise awareness of what we're doing, but it's really these kinds of connections, especially with community groups, that can bring this awareness to the cities and utilities. And then I think and then working with those communities to understand what is the right way and the best way to bring the community into the information out to the community, understanding the goals and needs of of each individual city and utility, because they're going to be slightly different, though we're all working towards the same goal of safe, clean, affordable drinking water.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So making sure that we have a network, a collaborative network where we can continue to share information. Jill Ryan, our director, if you could, what is the plan for continuing to elevate this handbook, elevate water councils, please?
Yeah, it's a great question. So thanks for that, Reverend. And you know, it's Freshwater Future is going to use all of its tools. It's going to be Facebook, Twitter, our website. It's already up there. We're going to post these webinars up there. We're going to have more of these webinars. But also, we rely on the people on this panel. We're going to make sure that in Flint, we're getting this word out through Michael Harris and his great organization at Flint Development Center. We're going to ask Reverend Pinckney to continue, because he does it so well, to continue to get the word out about these things. And excuse me, we will continue to follow up with all of the cities that are out of compliance with the lead and copper rule right now. We have heard in the past day, as we were advertising for this, we've heard from at least one of those cities, because they don't like to talk about the fact that this stuff is toxic. But it is toxic, and we need to ensure that not only we're sharing that information so that people know this is dangerous, but also how to deal with it. And that's why we needed this handbook, so it can help people see how to deal with this once they know it's there. And so we're going to continue on all of these avenues to get this word out, to build water councils. All it takes to build a water council is, if you're interested, you give one of us a call or send us an email, and we will make sure we're there to help you do that, to create the structure by which your residents in your community can lead to make sure you're happy with what's happening in your water system. So from my perspective, everybody on this call, everybody on the panel is critical to ensuring that the word continues to spread and we continue to get this information out there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It is definitely community action to elevate Blue Conduit. We have a commissioner in Benton Harbor, Commissioner Mary Alice, and Reverend put her on the call, and she has been tirelessly inviting Blue Conduit back to council meetings, commissioner meetings. It is time. The work has to be done. I do not want to go without having the question asked earlier. How do you get in touch with the Flint Development Center? I saw that the phone number was there. In our chat box, we have provided you with the website information for Flint. We're going to also have these on the Flint website, on the Benton Harbor website, on the City of Toledo, the Toledo Water Council website, and all of those 26 cities that are out of compliance in Michigan. We're going to begin to send out these into those community areas. It's not if it's okay with the municipality to do this work. It's necessary for the citizens of our country to do this work. It's necessary for the citizens of our cities and our state of Michigan to do this work. So it's not asking permission. We will get the work done. We will get the information out. This is one mechanism, but you, starting with the residents, you are the answer. We did have an awesome opportunity to have a drawing for the water filter, and that winner is Miss Lynn Jones. So welcome and congratulations. Thank you for being on with us. That will be emailed, or not emailed to you. Digital is not that wonderful, but we will definitely get it out to you and address, okay? So thank you so very much for everyone. Are there any final questions? I see all the questions in the chat box has been answered. Are there any final statements from any of our panelists? As I do a once
Alicia, if I
over,
could just
please.
Water lab. And although that testing is free for any Flint home, that water lab is also available for residents of that analysis, but you can people there just like yourself doing that analysis.
Well, you might want to turn your
and
camera off.
sending you information about what that means. And right?
Jill, can you turn off your video and then say that again? Because your bandwidth was a little low.
All right, I'm sorry about that. Can you hear
No
me
worries.
better?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So we just want to let people know that that Flint Community Lab is available outside of Flint for those residents who would like a lab that is run by people just like yourself and is going to test your water with all the care in the world and send you information about what that means. That is available. If there will be a small fee to cover the cost, but even outside of Flint, that wonderful lab is available to help other residents. So we just want to begin to spread that word that the Flint Community Lab is there to help everybody.
Wonderful.
And
Great.
I want to piggyback on what you just said, Jill, to drive home the point. This is a community lab, and I want to stress the word community. It's about the community. It's about people coming up, knocking on the door, and coming in and seeing what we have there. The lab is open, it's available, and you can come take a look around first if you get an opportunity. If you can't, if you don't want to know if you want to get your water tested, come see what we're doing first. And then it'll ease your mind about the top-notch people that we have working there. It may drive Dominique crazy, but she'll welcome you in with open arms, and she'll work with you, and she'll get you right, and she'll bring you in and put you in the program and make sure that your water is tested, no matter where you're from. If you're in Toledo and you want to drive up to a couple hours, you're going up north, stop by the lab, get your water tested, find out what's happening, and talk to us. You can go to our website at flintdc.org, Flint, the letter D, the letter C.org, or you can call us at call us on our phone number there. That's available on the in the chat. Is that in the chat there?
Yes,
So
sir.
you call us on our phone number.
810-875-9127. Yes, sir.
Yep. And you can call. I guess I'm going to give my number out here. My number is like a public record, 810-210-6554. My name is Michael Harris, 810-210-6554. If you just want to call and talk about how this process works and what we've been doing here for a while, we'll give you some advice and how we should proceed about that. So I want to thank you, Jill, for offering that opportunity.
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
I want to also continue to lift up the fact that the Flint Lab didn't just happen. It was community action. It was using tools like this handbook to elevate the concerns of residents, to hold municipalities and to hold states accountable to legislation. It was policy reform. It was amazing young people like Brandon, who looks absolutely wonderful, doing this work, knocking on doors, hanging door hangers. Reverend Pinckney, folks, elders who are seasoned in teaching young people what to do. It is your responsibility, community, to lift up your voice and build people power through advocacy, through education, through tireless times, communicating with folks like Blue Conduit and saying enough is enough and getting the work done. Having legal language translated by folks like Nick Leonard over at the Law Center. Working with folks like Freshwater Future. We cannot get this done without one another. It is all of our responsibility. Test your water through citizen science. Get our young people educated about the workforce development of water and engagement, to hold municipalities responsible. Thank you, Ed, for being on with us, and to make sure that we as a community continue to connect and get the work done. Thank you so much for being with us. If there are no other questions, concerns, or just statements, we at Freshwater Future and at the Great Lakes Environmental Law Center want to say thank you. I want to make sure that our directors have an opportunity to say any closing remarks. Nick, Jill.
Just a huge thank you from Freshwater Future for everybody, from panelists to our attendees, for taking the time to participate here and want to know more about the safety and of your water and take action on that. So thank you again. We look forward to connecting with you soon, and finding ways to go forward together.
Wonderful. Nick?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate the thank you. It's great to be a part of this community, and just let people know, like, we're always here as a legal resource. If you ask those questions and you don't think you're getting the right answers, or you're still concerned that water for your family, the water for a community isn't safe, we're here to provide sort of the power of the law to you so that you can get the fixes, get the answers, get the changes that you deserve. And so we do this work a lot, and we're happy to be here for all of you when that point comes up.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Have a blessed day. Stay safe, and we will see you soon. Bye now.
Right. You look good, Brandon.
Hey, Mike, hang
My
in there,
man,
Big Mike.
thank you, brother Mike.
Hey, Brandon, you back.
Yeah, I got it all worked out.
All right, good to see you.
All right,
man.
guys.
Everybody have a good day.
All right,
Thank you very
peace.
much, everybody. Have a
All
great
right,
day.
peace.
Bye-bye.